Hello, everyone. I'm here again with Dr. Laurell, and we have questions coming in, which are very exciting. And I thought today we're going to be talking about weight gain during midlife and what do we really know about that, and how we'll give you some solutions on how you can really deal with that. Because as we know, when we go through the changes of menopause, for example, or even midlife, the changes in estrogen and testosterone, what happens is our metabolism changes, and rightly so. Hormones are what the hormones come from to urge on. And so we're not urging on our metabolism as much anymore. So let's see what we can do about it. Let's first talk about this, what is termed visceral fat, insulin resistance, all in the same ballpark as weight gain in midlife. So, Dr.
Mhm.
Laurel, I'd love to turn it over to you and hear what you have to say on that before, I could talk about some strategies in which we can work with that.
Yes. Well, first, I want to talk about the scope of the problem. I don't think people realize this, but 40% of adult Americans are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. About 10% are diabetic and 30% are pre-diabetic, which in most people means they are experiencing what's known as insulin resistance. And we are more sensitive to insulin resistance as we age and those hormones decline. They with less estrogen and less testosterone, we're more likely to have insulin resistance. And that's where the cells that are supposed to take sugar out of the bloodstream after we eat food, insulin's supposed to trigger that uptake of sugar so cells can use it for energy. And in insulin resistance, those cells are no longer listening as well to that message from insulin. And what happens in response is the body's like, oh, you're not going to listen to me? I'll make you more insulin.
Um,
And what insulin does is it also triggers the body to start making more fat, burning less fat, storing more fat. Particularly, we end up storing it in the abdominal area and can have more belly fat.
yeah, but there's a difference, though, in my understanding between, let's make that clarification here. Belly fat does exist, but we're not talking about that subcutaneous little pinch that we might have around our waist. We're talking about the belly fat that's visceral, that's inside. That's where the problem comes with inflammation, the diabetes. Anyway, I'm not using diabetes directly here, but inflammation and that cascade of all those other metabolic factors that happen with the result of that insulin resistance. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're actually getting fat kind of around our visceral organs. Yeah, it's a deeper kind of fat, and it is more harmful to our bodies. And yes, it's associated with more inflammation. We also end up with altered appetite, where we're going to be, craving more of those junky foods. So end up again in one of those bad cycles where we have insulin resistance that makes us put on weight. Now we have extra inflammation and bad food cravings, and then we have more insulin resistance and more weight, and so we need to do something about it.
We certainly do. Do you think that that's what's very interesting? Do you think that you alluded to it? I just want to clarify. Do you think sometimes that we crave more sugar because we have the insulin resistance? Because of course, insulin, we take it up in the cell, and then that cell feeds the brain, for example. So if we have insulin resistance and the cells are not taking up the glucose into the cell, the sugar,
Right. Yes.
to the cell, so would we automatically just want to keep eating more sugar because we're not getting the sugar that we need?
Yeah, so the cells are both trying to protect themselves from the damage that sugar and sugars from carbohydrates can cause to the cells, but at the same time, the body isn't getting what the nutrients that it needs. It's trying to protect itself, but there's always also this blockade. So it does end up with inappropriate food cravings because of that.
What do you think? This is off the record, but I'm just thinking off the cuff, I should say. What do you think about people that follow the ketone? I use the word ketone, ketosis, the diet that's with no carbohydrates. Do they
Mhm.
overcome the insulin resistance by doing that? I'm just
Um,
thinking, I don't know.
yeah, no, that's a very good point. That can be one of the ways that we go about it. I don't always recommend that diet to my patients. I'm not always big on extreme diets. I mean, sometimes we do need an extreme diet like that for a while or for particular medical issues. But yeah, having an extremely low carbohydrate, keto or paleo diet, but I'm more likely to put my patients on is a paleo-ish diet. Maybe we do still want a few healthy carbohydrates in the mix, but we're wanting to at least reduce those carbohydrates, depending on how severe the case is, of course.
Yeah, I know for myself, because I'm in midlife, maybe I'm even beyond midlife soon, and I find that there are certain herbs that I've added to my meals, and I also use low glycemic index foods. And what glycemic index means, for those that might not be familiar with it, is when we eat something, it's our body will elicit a response. And if it has a high glycemic index, it's going to elicit more of an insulin response versus a low glycemic index food, which won't give us as much of a surge of insulin. So even though if a food is a high glycemic, like a sweet potato, not a sweet potato, let's say a white potato is high glycemic index. But if you put fat with that,
Hmm.
changes that digestibility and the uptake of sugar in the system, if you're indeed uptaking, we don't know. So using that plus exercise, how do you think about what do you think about that, Laurell? I mean, I use exercise with low glycemic index foods and a mixed meal. I'm
Yes.
I'm very similar in your thinking. I really want to learn balance because I think when we really eliminate those whole grains, we're losing a lot of other benefits, feeding the
Hmm.
beneficial bacteria, the microbiome. Also, carbons, which you get from carbohydrate, push the Krebs cycle, which is your
Hmm.
respiratory, it's your burning off, it's your metabolism, your metabolic rate. That's
Right.
metabolic function. So carbon, which that pushes the Krebs cycle, that cycle in each cell that pushes the engine going.
Hmm.
I don't like to do anything that's too extreme, but I use the mixed meal, low glycemic index food, and
Hmm.
I also have done something a little different in middle age. I try to get two smaller activities a day versus one big one like I used to do.
Hmm. Right. And
Find
some people might
fun.
choose to eat those healthy carbohydrate foods in the meals that are a little bit before those exercise times, so that you have the fuel to exercise. Carbohydrates are fuel. The more you're active, the more you need some of that fuel. So yeah, making healthy choices in your carbohydrates, getting those nutrients, those healthy fibers. I absolutely agree. And then really, you're talking about a mixed meal. I really encourage my patients to make sure they're getting protein with all three meals so that they kind of have this steady level of protein throughout the day, and that helps maintain a stable blood sugar, which is and improves how the sugar is released, that glycemic index factor that you're talking about. And then I also encourage my patients to really emphasize high antioxidant foods. I love berries myself. It's why we need to eat our vegetables, a diversity of vegetables. Every color in those fruits and vegetables represent a different antioxidants, and the more of those we can get is very meaningful when it comes to preventing insulin resistance.
Okay, there's nothing I can really add to that, except there's some little bit of something different also. When I was in a different stage of life, I was able to do things without eating. And I'm finding because of that change with the insulin, now before I like to bike, I like to ride waves, I like to go out and do a few miles a day. And I'm only telling you that because that's the kind of activity. And I notice that I do, if I'm going to do something at that at that level, I do need now to eat something before, whereas in my youth, I never had to. I can just go
Mhm.
out and I don't know how it happened. It was maybe the vapors in the air, but now I actually need to have
Mhm.
something and I can go, believe it or not, I can work twice as hard and enjoy my activity as opposed to push through my
Mhm.
activity.
Right. Yes. And of course, we know how important exercise is for maintaining healthy blood sugar, and then that helps prevent insulin resistance. And sometimes it's really important to add supplements to things that we might not be
Right.
getting in the diet. So many people that are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Sorry about my friend here. She just loves me too much.
Love it.
But
Totally. Okay.
but so many people who are pre-diabetic are magnesium deficient, and magnesium's so important for all that cascade of cellular functioning on too many more levels than we could even name. And then sometimes I'm looking towards more antioxidants through supplements also, like CoQ10 as an antioxidant can uh, be useful. So there's many things that we need to look at what the body is lacking, giving it all these healthy things to try to help it function better.
Well, while I have you here, before we end, what I do want to ask you is, do you recommend a certain, I know I take a certain form of magnesium. What would be the form of magnesium that you found, maybe not, I don't know, I'm asking,
Mhm.
more efficiently utilized by the body for people that maybe want to take magnesium? Because I know when I went through that midlife change, or I didn't go early, it was in my 50s. And I remember I didn't do it because I read the literature at all. I just had this instinct to start taking magnesium every night.
Mhm.
And I believe it or not, I've been doing it for now, let's see, probably 20 years. I use
Mhm. Yeah.
magnesium. And then I
Yeah.
started reading about it with the 300 or more
Mhm.
biochemical factors that it contributes. And so to,
Yeah.
so do you have a form that you find more useful
Mhm.
or people tolerate more?
I do pick and choose them based on what that patient might need. Personally, I'm taking magnesium malate, and I tend to choose that for my patients that need more energy because malic acid can be used for the Krebs cycle, the energy creation cycle in the body. Or if I'm dealing with a patient who's more anxious, I'm going to choose magnesium glycinate because the glycine brings a calming element. And there's actually several good forms of magnesium. Do you have a favorite?
I take a mix
Mm-hmm.
just because I'm all of the above and whatever. I just take a mix and I just find a good source. And I always know because I just, you know how sometimes you just intuitively feel that this feels right, and then I'll use that.
Mm,
That's what I use. I've
yes.
tried some that didn't work as well, but what does that mean, right? So right now, I don't know if anybody really just makes one. I know that when I see them and I review them, usually there's a few that will be put into the mix. But I'm
Hmm.
glad you gave us those tips. I wouldn't have thought to give out those tips with the malate versus the glycinate. And it's real important to have that knowledge. And that's why people would come to you to give them that knowledge for what they need to take or not need to take.
Hmm.
But also, I also think when we're dealing with any type of this midlife, these changes, it's really important to, because I know our sleep gets off a lot and magnesium would help with that.
Mhm.
That's why I take it
Yes.
in the evening, because when sleep is off, that's going to increase your stress level, cortisol production, and losing weight can also be a problem. The more you
Mhm.
rest, the more you have the ability to relax, the more your body and your mind has time to repair itself. And repair is really, really important. First, you need to remove what's causing the issue, and then you need to repair what damage has been done. We need to repair and
Mhm.
restore. So that's where
Yes.
magnesium can be very useful in that too, as well as other things, of course.
Mhm.
That's where I'm going with that.
Yes, very, very good point. And all of those things are interrelated, our sleep, our stress. These are all factors that are, besides diet, that are influencing insulin resistance. So we're going to be treating the whole body, right?
We use the word diet so loosely, and I
Hmm.
used to give courses, and I do every once in a while, diet for the mind. Like, what are we taking in? It's if you're not sleeping, you're under stress, right? What are we feeding ourselves? And all of those from the body. The body, as I always say, the body and mind are one. The body is just a physical manifestation of the mind. The mind is a more subtle realm, and there's even more subtle realms that we learn with any kind of meditation or anything like
Hmm.
that. This isn't the topic of meditation. It's about weight, insulin
Yes.
resistance, and belly fat. But don't worry about having a few extra pounds on you. That's not really what we're referring to. We're referring to really just working with yourself so that you don't get into that state of uh, the metabolic syndrome of insulin resistance and diabetes and things, because getting into those kinds of states really doesn't allow you to live with the joyfulness that you need in life. It's not fun to not feel well. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Anything you'd like to add to that, or should we close
Mhm.
for
I,
today?
I thought that was very good because, our goal is always to feel vibrantly alive. And, when we're carrying too much weight, that's going to cause us body inflammation, make it harder to move joyfully through the world. And one last thing I want to mention is in the future, we'll want to talk even more about detoxification because people don't realize that the toxins in the world are also contributing to the prevalence of diabetes, insulin resistance, and pre-diabetes. So beyond all these great things that we can do for our body, we need to think about toxins in detoxification and dealing with that level too. So we'll make sure and keep covering that topic.
Good to know. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And if you'd like to get a hold of Dr. Laurell or myself, that will be in the show notes at the bottom of this video. And until next time, always be happy and be healthy. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.